Maya stepped off the taxi and onto the busy airport pavement. The sun shone brightly, reflecting off the glass walls of the terminal. She carried a single black suitcase in one hand and her laptop bag in the other. Her calm steps and confident posture immediately caught the attention of some passengers who walked past her. She smiled politely at a child who waved, and the child's parents smiled back, unaware of the tension building elsewhere. Inside the airport, the terminal was full of travelers rushing in every direction. Some pulled luggage behind them, while others pushed carts stacked with bags. The smell of coffee and baked goods floated from nearby kiosks, and the low hum of announcements blended with the chatter of passengers. Maya moved smoothly through the crowd. Her movements were purposeful yet calm, and she seemed completely at ease in the chaos. At the security checkpoint, 2 officers noticed her as she approached. They exchanged quick glances. Maya's professional outfit and composed demeanor made her stand out among the mostly casual travelers. One officer whispered something to the other, his voice tense. "Do you see her? Something feels off," he said. The other officer frowned and nodded slowly, though neither could explain exactly why they felt uneasy. Maya placed her suitcase on the conveyor belt and unzipped it with practiced ease. She removed her laptop, phone, and a small travel bag, placing them neatly in the trays. Her hands moved steadily and she did not seem in a hurry. She smiled politely at the officer checking the trays. "Good morning," she said clearly, her voice calm and warm. The officer studied her more closely. Her movements were precise, almost too precise, and her calm demeanor made them nervous. They decided to call for assistance. One pressed a button on his radio, speaking in hushed tones. "We may have a suspicious passenger here, requesting backup." The words hung in the air, though Maya continued following standard security procedures without noticing the growing tension. As the officers spoke into their radios, another officer approached with a clipboard. He glanced at Maya briefly, then whispered to his colleague, "Should we ask her some questions? Maybe verify her identity?" The first officer hesitated, then nodded. They were unsure how to proceed, feeling a mix of duty and anxiety. Maya, still unaware of the attention she had drawn, retrieved her belongings from the trays and placed them back into her suitcase. She zipped it carefully and lifted it with ease, showing no sign of stress. Passengers around the area noticed the unusual glances and whispered among themselves. A man standing near the security line nudged his companion. "Why are they staring at her like that?" he asked quietly. His friend shrugged, equally curious. Maya noticed some of the glances but did not let them affect her. She moved forward with confidence, following the normal flow of travelers through the checkpoint. One officer stepped forward cautiously. "Ma'am, could you please step aside for a moment?" he asked. Maya paused and looked at him politely. "Of course," she said. Her voice was calm and professional, and she followed him to a small waiting area away from the main line. She placed her suitcase beside her and sat on the bench, maintaining perfect posture. Her calmness seemed to intensify the tension in the officers, who were now more uncertain than ever. The officers began reviewing her identification and ticket. One of them muttered under his breath, "Everything seems normal, but I can't shake this feeling." They continued their discussion quietly, unaware that their concern was about to escalate. Another officer suggested calling the FBI for further verification. "We should be safe than sorry," he said. They agreed, feeling a mix of nervousness and responsibility. Maya remained seated, her hands resting lightly on her lap. She glanced around and observed other travelers moving past. She saw a child drop a toy and quickly picked it up, returning it to the child with a gentle smile. The parents thanked her and the child waved. Her actions were simple, kind, and ordinary, but somehow they made the officers feel even more uncertain. Her composure did not match their perception of suspicious, yet they could not explain why. While waiting for further instructions from their superiors, the officers began to scrutinize her more closely. One of them asked a coworker, "Does she have any identification from a restricted organization or company?" They searched her belongings subtly but found nothing unusual. Every item in her bag was standard: a laptop, charger, notebooks, and personal items for travel. Her boarding pass was genuine. Her identification matched her face, and she had no prohibited items. Despite all evidence pointing to normalcy, the feeling of unease persisted. One officer glanced at the security camera feed, noting her calm demeanor. "She's not showing any signs of stress or nervousness. "That's what worries me," he whispered. Another officer nodded in agreement. "Right. Normal travelers usually get anxious at checkpoints, but she seems too composed," he said. They decided to escalate the situation, calling in the FBI to ensure safety and verification. Maya, still unaware, adjusted her seat and looked around the waiting area. She saw families, business travelers, and tourists all moving through the terminal. She noticed a woman trying to calm a crying baby, and Maya smiled encouragingly. She exuded patience and calmness, and her presence seemed to bring a sense of quiet order to the otherwise busy environment. She continued waiting politely, unaware that she had drawn the attention of federal authorities. Passengers nearby began to notice the unusual situation. They saw the officers speaking nervously into radios and observed Maya sitting quietly, her posture perfect, her gaze composed. Some whispered among themselves, curiosity mixing with concern. One man muttered, "Why would the FBI need to get involved for a regular traveler?" A woman beside him shrugged, equally puzzled. Maya, however, maintained her composure, simply observing the world around her with quiet intelligence and kindness. As the minutes passed, the tension in the security area grew. Officers waited anxiously for the FBI to arrive, pacing slightly and speaking in hushed tones. They reviewed every detail they could think of, scanning her documents, luggage, and even her movements on the checkpoint camera feed. All signs indicated she was a regular traveler, but their instincts told them otherwise. Their unease increased with every passing second. Maya remained unaware of the increasing scrutiny. She quietly checked her watch, noting the time of her flight. She sipped water from a small bottle, maintaining her calm demeanor. Her ability to stay composed despite the growing tension around her only deepened the mystery for the officers. They could not explain why she seemed so ordinary yet felt somehow extraordinary in her presence. Finally, one officer spoke into the radio. "We have contacted the FBI. They are on their way. Please advise us on how to proceed until they arrive." The other officer nodded, feeling both relief and worry. Maya looked up politely and asked, "Is there a problem I should know about?" Her question was gentle yet precise, reflecting her professionalism and calm nature. The officers hesitated, unsure how to answer. Maya's calm and polite presence remained unshaken. She observed the surroundings and even offered a warm smile to a fellow traveler who seemed anxious. Her ability to stay composed and kind in such a tense environment puzzled the officers. They continued to wait, unaware that their assumptions about her were about to be completely overturned. As the first signs of the FBI team appeared in the terminal, officers whispered hurried instructions to each other. Maya noticed the approaching agents but did not move. She remained seated, calm and observant, her posture impeccable. The busy airport continued around her, but in that small waiting area, the atmosphere seemed to shift, preparing for the surprising revelation that would soon follow. Passengers nearby watched with curiosity as the scene unfolded. They noticed the tension on the officers' faces and the calm presence of the woman in question. Murmurs spread among the crowd, as people wondered who she was and why federal authorities were being called. Maya simply observed politely, her gentle smile reassuring those around her. Time passed slowly, and the airport buzzed with its usual activity. Despite the growing attention, Maya's calm demeanor never faltered. She appeared ordinary to the untrained eye, but her presence commanded respect without demanding it. Her quiet confidence and kindness contrasted sharply with the nervous tension surrounding her. The scene set the stage for a moment that would soon surprise everyone in the terminal. The officers continued to await instructions, unsure how to proceed. Maya, still seated, adjusted her bag and looked around. She noticed small details, from the luggage tags of travelers to the expressions on children's faces. Her awareness of her surroundings was precise yet unobtrusive. She remained a model of composure, unknowingly preparing for the attention and respect that was about to be directed her way. The waiting area felt unusually tense as Maya remained seated, calm and composed. Around her, passengers continued their routine, unaware of the unusual scrutiny she faced. A few noticed the nervous glances of the security officers and whispered among themselves, "Why is that woman being watched so closely?" A young man asked his companion. The other shrugged, equally puzzled. Maya did not react to the whispers. Her focus stayed on her surroundings and her own calm routine. One officer continued reviewing her documents, trying to find any clue that might explain why she had triggered such concern. He flipped through her boarding pass, identification, and travel itinerary repeatedly. Every detail was in order. Her ID matched the name on her ticket. She had no prohibited items. Everything about her was ordinary, yet the officers still felt uneasy. One muttered under his breath, "She seems too normal. That's what worries me." Another officer, standing nearby, suggested that they monitor her more closely. He spoke quietly into his radio, giving instructions for extra surveillance. Security cameras were adjusted to focus on her movements as she sat quietly. Maya, unaware of the growing tension, observed the people around her. She noticed a man struggling with an overfilled suitcase and offered a polite nod of encouragement. The man smiled back, appreciative of her kindness. Passengers began to notice the unusual attention she was receiving. A mother whispered to her child, "Look at that lady. She is being watched by many officers." The child tilted her head curiously, watching Maya as she adjusted her suitcase. Maya smiled gently at the child, who waved back. The simple interaction drew small smiles from nearby travelers, who began to wonder why the officers were so focused on her. The officers decided to question Maya further. "Ma'am, could you answer a few questions while we wait?" one asked hesitantly. Maya stood and nodded politely. "Of course," she replied calmly, her voice steady and warm. She followed the officer to a corner of the waiting area. Her movements were fluid and composed, and she maintained a professional posture. The officers watched her carefully, unsure of what they might discover. Maya answered questions about her travel plans and purpose of her journey with ease. She spoke clearly, politely, and with confidence. She explained her flight details, the cities she would visit, and the reason for her trip. Every answer was straightforward and precise, leaving no room for doubt. Despite her clarity and openness, the officers' unease persisted. They had nothing to question, yet their instinct suggested they remain cautious. Passengers nearby observed the interaction quietly. Some exchanged puzzled glances, noticing the calm, collected manner of Maya and the nervous, uncertain behavior of the officers. One man whispered, "She does not seem suspicious at all. I do not understand why they are calling the FBI." Another passenger nodded in agreement, impressed by Maya's composure. The situation was unusual, and the growing curiosity of bystanders added to the tension. Meanwhile, the officers communicated with their superiors, explaining the situation. "She is cooperative, polite, and fully compliant, but something does not feel right," one said. His colleague agreed, stating that her calm and precise behavior was unusual for a regular passenger. They decided to continue waiting for FBI agents, unsure whether this would be a routine verification or a serious concern. Maya, still unaware, observed the people around her with quiet interest. She noticed a young couple struggling with directions to their gate. Without hesitation, she offered clear and friendly guidance, pointing them in the right direction and wishing them a safe journey. The couple thanked her warmly. Her polite gestures impressed nearby travelers, though the officers' anxiety continued to grow. They could not understand how someone so ordinary could generate such concern. The waiting area was filled with subtle tension. Officers whispered among themselves while watching every small movement of Maya. She adjusted her hair, sipped water from her bottle, and gently tapped her foot while waiting. Every gesture was ordinary, yet the officers interpreted her composed behavior as unusually controlled. They could not reconcile their intuition with the reality in front of them. Security staff reviewed airport footage from nearby checkpoints. They saw Maya pass through previous scans without incident. Cameras showed her interacting politely with other travelers, following rules precisely, and maintaining calm confidence. Still, the officers could not shake the feeling that something was different about her. Their nervous glances continued to meet each other, confirming that they had called for backup for a reason they could not fully articulate. Passengers continued their routines, but some now watched Maya closely. They noticed how she remained poised and polite despite the intense scrutiny. A young woman whispered to her friend, "She seems so calm. She must be important or very confident." Her friend nodded, equally intrigued. Maya, unaware of the attention, offered a kind smile to a man struggling with his suitcase. He smiled back gratefully, noticing her kindness and composure. Time moved slowly as security waited for the FBI to arrive. The officers tried to maintain a professional demeanor, but their anxiety was obvious. They reviewed her identification again, checking every detail. They verified her ticket multiple times and cross-checked her travel information. Every fact matched perfectly, yet their instincts told them to remain cautious. The growing crowd of passengers added to the awkwardness of the situation. Maya remained patient and observant. She noticed a child drop a toy nearby and quickly picked it up, handing it back with a friendly smile. The child waved enthusiastically, and parents thanked her politely. Her small gestures continued to demonstrate her kindness, calmness, and professionalism. Nearby travelers were impressed by her presence, contrasting it with the anxious behavior of the officers surrounding her. The officers whispered into their radios, providing updates and awaiting instructions. She is fully cooperative. All identification is verified. She is polite and calm. Still, our instincts suggest caution, one reported. Another officer nodded silently, unable to explain why their intuition differed from the evidence. The FBI had been called and their arrival was imminent, heightening the tension in the terminal. Maya glanced at her watch, noting the time until her flight departure.
She sipped water and adjusted her belongings.
Every action was simple, ordinary, and careful. Yet to the officers, her calmness and precise movements made her appear highly disciplined, almost like someone trained for special missions. Their nervous anticipation grew as they waited for federal authorities to arrive and clarify the situation. Passengers began to speculate among themselves. She looks like a professional. Maybe she is part of the government, a man whispered. A woman nearby nodded. I think she must be important. That is why the officers are so careful. The murmurs spread quietly through the waiting area. Maya, still unaware of the speculation, simply observed the surroundings with calm curiosity and gentle attentiveness. The airport atmosphere felt unusual. Officers paced slightly, discussing what to do next. Should we continue monitoring her? One asked. Another replied, yes, but carefully. She has done nothing wrong. Everything points to normal behavior. Despite this, the sense of tension remained. They were unsure how their intuition could be so persistent when evidence suggested everything was fine. Maya continued to remain composed, her presence quietly commanding respect. She noticed small details in the environment, the flow of travelers, announcements over the speakers, and children moving through the crowd. Her awareness was precise but unobtrusive. She moved gently to adjust her bag, ensuring nothing was in her way. Her calm and professional demeanor remained consistent. Finally, a subtle change in the atmosphere occurred as passengers noticed figures in dark suits moving through the terminal. The officers stiffened slightly, signaling that the FBI had arrived. The murmurs among travelers grew quietly. As curiosity and speculation increased, Maya noticed the approaching agents but did not rise or move hastily. She remained seated, calm and poised, ready to respond if needed. The moment before the FBI's arrival was charged with anticipation. Officers whispered instructions to one another, preparing to explain the situation and ensure safety. Nearby travelers observed with curiosity and admiration, noticing the unusual combination of calm and tension. Maya's presence remained steady, her professional composure unshaken, as she quietly prepared for the unexpected attention that was about to come. Passengers watched silently as the first FBI agents moved closer. Officers in the area adjusted their positions slightly, ensuring that everything was in order. Maya's calm and patient demeanor contrasted sharply with the nervous energy of the security officers. Travelers began to recognize that she was the center of attention for reasons unknown to them. The waiting area seemed to hold its breath as the scene prepared to shift dramatically. The terminal buzzed with the usual activity, but the small waiting area where Maya sat felt charged with tension. Officers exchanged nervous glances as a pair of sharply dressed figures approached from the far end of the terminal. Their black suits and purposeful stride drew the attention of everyone nearby. Passengers paused, curious about the arrival of the federal agents. Maya noticed them but remained seated, calm and composed as if she had been expecting them all along. The officers near her stiffened, whispering urgently to each other. That must be them, one said quietly. His voice edged with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The other nodded, signaling to the surrounding staff to maintain order. Security personnel subtly moved aside, giving the approaching agents a clear path. The crowd of travelers sensed the importance of the moment. and murmurs of curiosity spread throughout the waiting area. Maya's eyes followed the agents as they drew closer. They moved with precision, scanning the crowd and nodding to each other in silent communication. Their presence was calm but commanding, and it became immediately clear that they were professionals of the highest caliber. Passengers could feel the difference in energy, recognizing that these were not ordinary officials but people with authority and expertise. The lead agent stopped a few feet away from Maya and looked directly at her. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Then, in a gesture that surprised everyone, the agent stood at attention and gave a crisp salute. His partner mirrored the action. Maya rose smoothly from her seat, returning the salute with equal precision. Her expression was calm but carried the weight of authority. The officers who had initially called the FBI were stunned. Their nervousness turned to shock and disbelief. Passengers watched the exchange in silence. Some gasped softly, realizing that the woman they had assumed to be suspicious was, in fact, a figure of high professional standing. Maya's calm and composed demeanor contrasted sharply with the earlier tension, and her presence commanded respect effortlessly. The officers felt a mixture of relief and embarrassment, unable to hide the fact that they had misjudged her entirely. The lead FBI agent spoke, his voice firm but respectful. "Maya, thank you for your patience. We are here to accompany you on your assignment." His tone made it clear that she was expected and recognized within their ranks. Maya nodded politely, acknowledging his words with a simple, professional smile. The officers nearby struggled to reconcile what they were witnessing with the assumptions they had made moments earlier. Maya's presence seemed to calm the passengers around her. She adjusted her bag neatly and maintained her composed posture. Even the child who had waved to her earlier now watched with curiosity and admiration. The parents of the child exchanged whispered comments, impressed by her calm confidence and respectful manner. The entire waiting area seemed to shift its energy, moving from tension to quiet respect. The officers who had called the FBI now approached Maya cautiously. One stammered slightly, trying to find the right words. We apologize, ma'am. We did not realize." Maya raised a hand gently, cutting him off with a polite smile. "There is no need for apologies. You were doing your duty. Thank you for being vigilant," she said. Her tone was calm and gracious, leaving no room for resentment. The officers' relief was palpable, but they still felt humbled by the unexpected revelation. The second agent stepped closer, checking Maya's travel documents and speaking briefly with the officers. Everything was routine for them. Their interaction was professional but concise, signaling that this was standard procedure for someone of Maya's rank and role. The officers watched carefully, trying to learn from the experience while quietly acknowledging their earlier misjudgment. Passengers whispered among themselves, impressed by the unfolding scene. "She must be important," a woman said quietly. A man nodded, adding, "I have never seen anyone so calm and confident in such a situation." Others smiled at her composure, noting that she had handled the earlier scrutiny without a hint of anger or frustration. Maya's behavior left a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it. Maya gathered her belongings with smooth precision. Her suitcase and laptop bag were organized neatly, reflecting her professional and meticulous nature. She gave a brief nod to the security officers, who now stood in a mixture of awe and embarrassment. The officers had initially interpreted ordinary actions as suspicious, but now they recognized the error of their judgment. The realization of her authority and importance settled over them, leaving a quiet humility. The lead agent spoke again, confirming the next steps. "We will escort you to a secure area where you can continue your preparations," he said. Maya nodded, following the agents with steady steps. Her calm and confident demeanor seemed to radiate through the group, inspiring respect and admiration from passengers and security personnel alike. Every step she took reinforced the impression of someone trained for precision and leadership. The waiting area remained quiet as Maya and the agents walked through it. Passengers glanced at her with curiosity and admiration. Some whispered to each other about the professionalism she displayed, noting how composed she had been throughout the entire process. The earlier tension in the terminal had shifted into an atmosphere of respect and intrigue. People realized that assumptions based on appearances could be misleading. As they moved toward the secure area, Maya spoke briefly to the agents. Her voice was calm yet firm. "Thank you for coordinating the escort. "I appreciate your professionalism." The agents acknowledged her words with nods, recognizing her leadership and experience. The officers who had initially called the FBI watched silently, realizing the lesson in humility and careful judgment that this situation had provided. Maya paused briefly near the entrance to the secure area. She looked back at the waiting area and gave a small, polite wave to the passengers who had observed the interaction. The wave was simple, but it conveyed confidence, kindness, and reassurance. The crowd responded with soft murmurs of approval and admiration. The contrast between the initial misunderstanding and the present recognition of her role was striking. The officers who had called the FBI were left standing, processing the unexpected turn of events. One muttered quietly, "I cannot believe we misjudged her like that." Another nodded in agreement, acknowledging their mistake silently. They felt a mixture of relief and humility, realizing that appearances could be deceiving and that professionalism and calm composure were invaluable qualities. Maya followed the agents into the secure area without hesitation. Her steps were precise, measured, and confident. The officers continued to watch from a distance, gaining insight from her demeanor and behavior. The passengers nearby continued to discuss the scene quietly, impressed by the grace and authority she had displayed. Maya had turned a moment of tension into an example of professionalism, poise, and respect. The lead agent spoke once more, confirming her upcoming assignment. "Everything is ready. You may proceed when you are prepared." Maya nodded, her expression calm and focused. She adjusted her bag one last time and took a deep breath, signaling readiness. The officers watched, humbled by the efficiency and composure she displayed throughout the interaction. As Maya moved deeper into the secure area with the agents, passengers continued to reflect on the scene they had witnessed. They recognized the importance of not judging others based on appearance or incomplete information. The energy in the terminal had shifted completely, moving from tension and curiosity to admiration and respect. Maya had handled the situation with a combination of grace, confidence, and professionalism that left a lasting impression on everyone present. The security officers, who had initially acted out of caution, now felt a deep sense of respect. They had learned a valuable lesson in observation, judgment, and humility. Their earlier assumptions were replaced by recognition of Maya's authority, expertise, and calm demeanor. It was a moment that would remain in their memory, shaping how they approached similar situations in the future. Passengers continued their routines, but many cast lingering glances at the secure area, where Maya had walked confidently with the agents. Some whispered to each other about the remarkable display of professionalism they had just witnessed. Others admired the patience and composure she had maintained under scrutiny. The scene had transformed from one of suspicion into an inspiring example of leadership and dignity. As the agents guided Maya through the secure corridor, she moved with quiet confidence. Her steps were steady, her posture impeccable, and her demeanor calm yet authoritative. The officers and passengers who had observed the event felt the impact of her presence. The initial tension had given way to a profound respect for her composure, professionalism, and the authority she naturally commanded. In that moment, Maya demonstrated that confidence, kindness, and discipline could turn even a misunderstanding into an opportunity for respect and recognition. She had navigated a tense and potentially embarrassing situation with grace, leaving everyone around her impressed and inspired. The lesson was clear. Appearances could be deceiving, and true professionalism shone through in actions, not assumptions. The terminal slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the small waiting area where Maya had been remained a point of quiet attention. Security officers whispered to each other, still processing the revelation that the woman they had thought suspicious was, in fact, a highly trained professional. Their nervousness had shifted to awe and humility. They could not help but admire her composure and the calm authority she had displayed. Maya had followed the agents into a side area near the gates, where they briefly discussed the next steps for her assignment. Her posture remained perfect, her movement smooth and deliberate. Even in conversation, her tone was calm, polite, and precise. The agents treated her with respect, clearly recognizing her experience and professionalism. Nearby, officers watched closely, hoping to understand what they had misjudged. The lead agent spoke to the officers who had initially called for backup. "This is Officer Maya Thompson," he said formally, confirming her identity. "She is on a special assignment that requires discretion. There is no cause for concern." The words sank in slowly for the officers. Their previous assumptions dissolved, replaced by an overwhelming sense of embarrassment and relief. One officer hesitated, trying to find the right words. We apologize for the misunderstanding," he said quietly. Maya turned to him and smiled gently. "There is no need for apologies. You were following procedure and being cautious, which is always important. I appreciate your diligence." Her words were kind and gracious, leaving the officer feeling both relieved and humbled. Passengers who had witnessed the previous events now began to ask questions quietly among themselves. "Who is she?" one whispered. "Why were the FBI agents saluting her?" A man replied, "I think she is part of some government or security work. She handled everything calmly and professionally." The whispers spread softly through the waiting area. People were impressed not only by her role but also by the dignity she displayed. Maya adjusted her suitcase neatly, checking that everything was in order. She observed the officers and agents carefully, ensuring all interactions were respectful and clear. Her attention to detail reflected her professional experience. Even a small gesture such as adjusting her laptop bag or straightening her posture conveyed precision and discipline. The officers silently took notes, realizing how much they could learn from her composure. The lead agent spoke again, turning to Maya with a subtle nod. "We will coordinate the next steps for your assignment here. You may continue after a brief review." Maya acknowledged the instruction with a calm nod and then addressed the officers directly. "Thank you for your vigilance today. Your attentiveness helped ensure everything proceeded smoothly, even if there was some initial confusion," she said. Her tone was sincere and composed. The officers nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. They had acted in good faith but had jumped to conclusions based on assumptions. Maya's calm response had diffused any tension and reminded them of the importance of patience, observation, and professionalism. They understood that even ordinary actions could be misinterpreted, and that it was essential to approach situations with care and respect. Passengers nearby continued to watch quietly, absorbing the lesson in professionalism. They admired Maya's poise and the respectful way she had addressed the officers. Children who had noticed her earlier still waved subtly, and a few adults whispered about her confidence and calm demeanor. Maya's actions had left a lasting impression on everyone present. Maya gathered her documents and checked the details of her boarding pass once more. She maintained a quiet, steady composure, demonstrating both confidence and attention to detail. The officers and passengers observed her carefully, impressed by the way she carried herself. Her calm and methodical approach contrasted sharply with the nervous energy that had filled the waiting area earlier. The lead agent spoke to the officers once more, explaining the sensitive nature of Maya's assignment. "We understand the situation may have caused concern, but Officer Thompson is highly trained and authorized for these operations. There is no further risk," he said. The officers absorbed the information, recognizing the significance of her role and the professionalism she exhibited. Maya turned to the officers and passengers, offering a polite smile. "I hope this serves as a reminder that appearances can be misleading. It is always best to observe carefully and act with patience and professionalism," she said. Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of experience and authority. The officers nodded silently, humbled by her guidance. A few passengers approached quietly, hoping to understand more about the situation. Maya responded politely, keeping her answers brief but clear. She did not reveal any sensitive details, maintaining the confidentiality of her assignment. Her calm communication reassured the travelers, who left the area with a newfound respect for her and an understanding of her professionalism. The officers began to discuss among themselves how they could improve their procedures. They acknowledged that they had acted on assumptions rather than facts. Maya's example had shown them the importance of careful observation, patience, and the need to treat every passenger with respect. Her calm presence had transformed a potentially tense situation into an opportunity for learning. Maya adjusted her belongings once more, preparing to continue her journey. She moved with smooth precision, her actions deliberate and controlled. Her attention to detail and composed demeanor inspired both the officers and the passengers who observed her. Every small gesture reinforced her professionalism and leadership qualities. The lead agent spoke to her briefly, confirming that everything was ready for her to proceed. Maya nodded, acknowledging the instruction without haste or hesitation. She was calm and confident, fully aware of her responsibilities and prepared to handle the next steps with care and efficiency. The officers felt a renewed respect for her expertise and composure. Passengers continued to discuss the events quietly among themselves. "She handled everything perfectly," a woman whispered. "I hope I can be that calm in a stressful situation," another said. The observers were impressed by her demeanor, recognizing that true professionalism was not about appearances but about composure, confidence, and respect for others. Maya took a final glance at the waiting area, ensuring that everything was in order. She offered a small nod to the officers, who responded with quiet gratitude. The lesson had been clear. Vigilance and caution were important, but assumptions could lead to misunderstandings. Maya had handled the situation with a combination of patience, clarity, and professionalism that left a lasting impression on all who witnessed it. The officers reviewed their procedures quietly, reflecting on what they had learned. They realized that patience, careful observation, and respect for travelers were essential in maintaining security without unnecessary tension. Maya's example had provided a powerful demonstration of professionalism, reminding them of the importance of humility and composure in all situations. Maya prepared to move toward the next stage of her assignment. She remained calm, collected, and precise in every action. The officers and passengers observed her quietly, taking note of her composed demeanor and graceful movements. Her presence had transformed the environment, shifting it from tension and suspicion to respect and admiration. Before leaving the area, Maya spoke briefly to the lead agent. "Thank you for your assistance and coordination. Your professionalism ensured a smooth process," she said. The agent nodded, acknowledging her words. Her calm and respectful tone reinforced the lessons of patience, observation, and care that she had demonstrated throughout the encounter. Passengers continued to reflect on the events they had witnessed. Children who had interacted with Maya earlier still smiled at her presence, while adults quietly discussed the importance of professionalism, kindness, and composure. Maya had turned a tense situation into an inspiring example, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had observed her. The officers who had initially called the FBI now understood the significance of her actions. They had learned an important lesson about patience, observation, and not jumping to conclusions based on appearances. Maya's calm and professional handling of the situation provided them with a model for future interactions with travelers. As Maya moved toward the secure area, passengers watched quietly, inspired by her demeanor. The lead agent confirmed that all preparations were complete for her assignment. Maya acknowledged the instructions with calm efficiency. Her composed, precise movements and respectful communication continued to demonstrate her professionalism and leadership. Maya's actions throughout the encounter had left a deep impression on the security officers, passengers and agents alike. Her calm confidence, clear communication, and composed demeanor transformed a potentially stressful situation into an example of professionalism and grace. The lesson was clear. True respect and authority come from actions, not assumptions. With one final polite nod to the waiting area, Maya prepared to continue her journey. Officers reflected on what they had learned, and passengers quietly discussed the remarkable display they had witnessed. Maya's example would remain with them, reminding them of the importance of composure, respect, and careful observation in every situation. Maya walked steadily toward the boarding gate, her suitcase rolling smoothly behind her. The terminal hummed with activity, but her calm presence drew the attention of several passengers. Some watched quietly, still processing the events from earlier. Officers and travelers alike had witnessed her professionalism and composure, and her actions left a lasting impression on everyone nearby. The officers who had called the FBI remained at the waiting area, reflecting on what had happened. They felt humbled by their assumptions and grateful for the lesson Maya had provided. One whispered to a colleague, "We learned more from her in 10 minutes than we have in years of training." The other nodded silently, both aware that appearances could easily mislead. Maya maintained her focus, walking with steady, confident steps, She noticed a man struggling with his luggage nearby and offered a polite nod. The man smiled in response, grateful for her quiet acknowledgement. She continued forward, her calm demeanor reassuring to passengers who had been curious or anxious earlier. Her professionalism extended beyond her official duties, influencing the environment around her. At the gate, she paused briefly to organize her belongings. Her suitcase was placed neatly, her laptop bag rested on top, and her boarding pass was ready. She scanned the area, noting officers and agents coordinating quietly. The lead agent approached her with a small nod, signaling that everything was ready. Maya acknowledged him calmly, her composure never wavering. Passengers nearby continued to watch, impressed by her efficiency and poise. A mother whispered to her child, "See how calm she is? That is how we should handle stress." The child nodded, wide-eyed, and smiled at Maya. Her quiet gestures and composed presence inspired admiration from people of all ages. The impression she left would remain long after she had departed. Security officers who had initially called for FBI assistance spoke quietly among themselves. "We need to remember this," one said. "Patience and careful observation are just as important as vigilance." The lesson was clear, and the officers felt a renewed commitment to approaching situations with respect and professionalism. They realized that their initial assumptions had been premature and could have been avoided with careful observation. Maya checked her boarding pass once more and prepared to step onto the jet bridge. She remained aware of her surroundings, maintaining the same calm and professional demeanor she had shown throughout the day. Passengers around her moved with the usual rush, yet many stole glances inspired by the dignity and confidence she displayed. The lead agent escorted her to the plane entrance briefly, ensuring that all protocols were followed. Maya acknowledged his guidance with a polite nod. She boarded the aircraft without haste, her movements precise and composed. Officers and agents who had accompanied her observed quietly, impressed by the seamless professionalism with which she handled each step of the process. Passengers waiting for other flights continued to discuss the incident quietly. "I can't believe we thought she was suspicious," one whispered. Another responded, "She handled it with such calm and grace. We could all learn from her example." The murmurs of admiration spread through the terminal, turning a moment of tension into one of respect and inspiration. Maya settled into her seat on the aircraft. She placed her bag carefully in the overhead compartment and took her seat with composure. Her calm demeanor remained unshaken, and she prepared quietly for the flight ahead. The passengers seated nearby noticed her professionalism and quiet authority, sensing that she was someone extraordinary in both skill and character. The officers and agents returned to their posts, reflecting on the lessons they had learned. The situation had begun with misunderstanding and tension, but Maya's actions had transformed it into an example of leadership, patience, and respect. They acknowledged silently that they would carry this experience into future duties, ensuring that vigilance was balanced with careful observation and humility. Maya looked out the window briefly, observing the planes moving across the tarmac. Her calm gaze reflected her focus and discipline. Every action she took was deliberate and controlled, demonstrating the qualities that had impressed everyone earlier in the terminal. Even in this quiet moment, her presence commanded respect and admiration from those who observed her. Passengers nearby whispered softly about her. "She was amazing," one said. "So calm and confident. I hope I can handle situations like that one day." Others nodded in agreement, inspired by the professionalism and poise Maya displayed. Her actions had left a lasting impression, reminding everyone that calmness, respect, and composure were powerful tools in any situation. The lead agent approached Maya briefly to confirm her next steps upon landing. "Everything is prepared for your assignment," he said quietly. Maya nodded in acknowledgement. Her composure and polite tone reflected her respect for the agent in the process, maintaining the professionalism she had demonstrated from the moment she arrived at the terminal. As the aircraft began to taxi toward the runway, Maya adjusted her seat and prepared for takeoff. The cabin filled with the usual hum of engines, but her calm presence brought a sense of reassurance to nearby passengers. Even without speaking, she conveyed a sense of steadiness and confidence that made others feel secure in her presence. The officers who had observed the earlier events continued their reflection. They realized that the experience had taught them far more than they had anticipated. They had learned about the importance of composure, humility, and observation. Maya had demonstrated that professionalism and calmness could resolve tension and inspire respect without raising voices or demanding attention. Passengers continued to admire her quiet authority and calm demeanor. Children who had noticed her earlier still glanced in her direction with curiosity. Adults whispered quietly about the lesson they had learned, that appearances could be misleading, and that patience and careful observation were as important as vigilance. Maya had left a profound impression on everyone present. The aircraft lifted smoothly into the sky, and Maya remained focused, calm, and ready for the next phase of her assignment. Her posture and composure reflected her experience and training, inspiring confidence in those who witnessed her actions. Even as she departed the terminal, her influence lingered, leaving a lesson in professionalism and respect for all to remember. The security officers who had initially called for the FBI now felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. They had learned an important lesson about assumptions, observation, and humility. They acknowledged silently that Maya had demonstrated a level of professionalism and composure far beyond what they had expected. Her calm and measured actions had transformed a tense situation into an inspiring example. Passengers continued to share stories quietly among themselves, reflecting on what they had witnessed. "She is a model of professionalism," one said softly. Another added, "The way she handled herself under pressure is remarkable." Maya had turned a potentially tense and confusing situation into an example of grace, composure, and leadership that would inspire others for a long time. As the plane climbed into the sky, Maya looked ahead calmly. She was focused on her work, prepared for her assignment, and undisturbed by the attention she had received. Her calm demeanor remained unshaken, demonstrating the qualities that had impressed both officers and passengers. Every small movement reflected precision, discipline, and professionalism. The terminal below returned to its normal rhythm, but the memory of Maya's calm and professional presence lingered. Officers reflected on their actions, passengers shared quiet admiration, and the lesson of patience, observation, and composure remained vivid. Maya had shown that professionalism, kindness, and calm authority could transform misunderstanding into respect and admiration. As the flight continued smoothly, Maya prepared mentally for the tasks ahead. Her calm focus and composed nature reflected her readiness for any challenge. The passengers and officers who had observed her earlier carried with them a lasting impression that true professionalism shines through in actions, not appearances, and that calm confidence can inspire respect and admiration from all. Maya settled into her routine quietly, maintaining composure, focus, and discipline. The aircraft moved steadily toward its destination, and she remained ready for whatever came next. Her presence had left a profound impact on everyone who had witnessed the events at the terminal. The lessons of patience, observation, humility, and calm authority were clear to all who had seen her in action. As the sun began to set outside the window, casting warm light across the cabin, Maya remained focused, composed, and prepared. Her journey continued, and the impression she had left on passengers and officers alike would not be forgotten. The story of her calm, professional presence at the airport became an example of respect, patience, and leadership that others would remember for a long time.